Hey everyone, today I'm going to talk about how to find the best arrow for your setup. There's lots of different arrow manufacturers out there and a lot of different spines, so how do you select the best arrow for you? The two most important things are how long is your arrow and what is your draw weight. So for me, I'm 26-inch draw length, but my arrows aren't actually 26 inches. So I'm really glad that manufacturers have changed their charts to actually read on what the arrow length is and it's not the draw length. So for me, like I said, I'm 26 and you're gonna need a tape measure, but I've already have these cut. So my draw length's 26, have it cut here, and it says to measure from the throw of the nock to the end of the arrow. And I'm 24.5. So even though I'm a 26-inch draw length, my arrows aren't actually 26 inches. And all the spine charts are gonna get you pretty close. But the other part of it is gonna be what are your components? So that's the next step. So the first thing is just know what your arrow length is, and then also your draw weight. And that's going to get you in a ballpark range, and it might be, like for me, I'm 400 to 350. But I actually go a little bit higher because it's better to be a little bit stiffer than weaker. And a lot of today's bows you can actually tune to make that arrow work with your bow. So for me, I'm going to have a 55 grain component up front. And then next you're going to need to know, are you going to put a wrap on, and what do your vanes weigh, as well as your nock. So what's the difference between those? Well, if you add a lot of weight to the front of your arrow, it's going to make that arrow weaker and you're going to need a heavier or a lower spine. And then if you add weight to the back, it's going to make that arrow stiffer. So those are important to know. There's softwares like Archer's Advantage out there that can actually help you put in your components and it's going to spit out the exact thing that you need. I personally don't use that. I just kind of go and add things up and then give or take what the difference is. So for me, 100 grain point, 55 insert. So I'm going to be 155 grains up front. And I think most standard manufacturers are like 100 grain field point or broadhead in the front is what they figure on. And then for me in the back, I'm going to have a wrap that weighs about 4 or 5 grains maybe. And then I'm going to play around with vanes. So it'll be anywhere from like 17 grains to 21 grains on the back for that. Plus nocturnal insert. So by the time I add the 55 grains up front and add everything on the back, I'm going to be somewhere in the 25 to 30 extra grains up front than what they calculate for. And luckily Easton and some of the other manufacturers might actually give you a range to add for certain grains of weight up front. So for me, it'll be anywhere from like 3 to 5 extra pounds on my draw weight. So that's going to put me right about the 75-pound range. So 350 might be a little stiff, and it might be right there to where I might have to tune the bow a little bit to get the arrow to work. But like I said, I would rather go stiffer with the arrow than a lower spine or a higher spine. I always get that mixed up of how I say it. So a lower spine is going to be actually stiffer than a higher spine. So like I said, I'm in that range of 350 to 400. 350 is going to be stiffer, and that's what I went with to make sure that is going to work with me adding weight to the front of that arrow. The other thing you want to think about when you're selecting arrows are, do you want to shoot a really fast speed or do you want to be slower? Agree with the test that's out there that Joel did, and it is 6.2 to 7.2 grains per pound. So for me, since I'm shooting a really short arrow, I usually end up in the 420-ish range. So it's actually under that. But if you are an average archer, I think it puts you like 440 or 430 all the way up to like 550 or something, which is a really good arrow weight, and you're going to be able to hunt anything with that. But if you're just going for target archery, you might want to shoot a really lightweight arrow. So these I like to shoot for right in the middle. A lot of them will tell you what they weigh per grains per inch. The other thing that you can do too is if you're kind of in between two spines, but you're really wanting to shoot a higher speed, you can go with the lighter or with the higher spined arrow to try to get more speed. But just remember, if you add more weight to the front of it, it might not tune for your setup. So things to think about is, what do you want your arrow to weigh at the end? And you can basically just kind of calculate in your head and get a rough estimate with what your components are going to be, and then what that arrow is going to weigh grains per inch. And then you can add that up and see where it's going to end up at. Some of the inserts now, these ones aren't one of them, but some of them you can actually add weight to the front. So if you think you are going to be adding weight to the front, I would definitely go with a stiffer arrow, because it will be a weaker and it might be hard to get that arrow to tune if it is too weak. On the other hand, if you go too stiff, it's going to get really heavy, because the stiffer the arrow is, the more carbon you're going to have, and it's going to be a little bit heavier. And with that, you can also add too much weight to the front, and your arrow will nosedive after a little while. So kind of want to be in between there. I like to be in the 10 to about 17% front of center. I'm not real worried about that, but it is nice to have more weight up front, because it's going to control the arrow better. And also I think it's just going to help get a little bit more of impact and momentum with it when it hits something. So to recap everything, things to think about when you're building arrows. Look and see what your arrow length is. So like I said, Easton's specified measurement is from the throw of the nock to the end of the arrow. So it's not actually your draw length anymore. And I think most arrow manufacturers have changed to that. And then how many pounds are you actually pulling on your bow? Even though your bow is 70 pounds, it might not actually be 70 pounds. So I would check that. And after that, it's going to be what components are you using. If you're adding a lot of weight to the front, you definitely want to go with a lower spine, stiffer arrow. If you're not adding more than the standard insert and 100 grain broadhead or field point, you're probably going to be fine with either one. I just try to go on the stiffer side to make sure that I am good and I can add a little bit of weight up front to that arrow. Next thing is going to be, what do you want your arrow to weigh? And that's going to really kind of probably make you figure out what brand of arrow you're going to go with, because a lot of them are different. If you go with like these Easton's or Victory or Black Eagle, a lot of them are going to be different. So you kind of want to figure out what arrow weight you want to be in, and then that might make it a little bit tougher to find the exact shaft, so you might have to go with a different brand than you thought if you're trying to reach a specific arrow weight. A lot of them are going to probably be close to the same ballpark, but some are a little heavier, especially when you get into like the full metal jackets and things like that. One thing I didn't talk about too is components. So a 4mm arrow versus a 5mm and a 6mm. Those are usually most of the standard arrows out there. There are some tournament ones that are different sizes, but if you're hunting and a regular archer, those are probably going to be your 3 most common sizes. I will go over that in the next video. I don't want to make these too long, but this will be several series videos coming out on how to choose the arrow for your setup. This is just going to get you a good idea of what to start with and what spine to look for when you're choosing your arrows. Hope this helped. Please check back and make sure you don't miss the next videos on how to select what size of arrow to go with. I really appreciate you watching. If you found this to be helpful at all, please subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out. I'm trying to grow. I'm a smaller channel, and I just want to provide good information and hopefully help you make better informed decisions when it comes to choosing arrows or any products out there. Thanks for watching. Stay hidden.